Data Storytellers. Today on the show, I have with me Renier Olivier. Renier, first of all, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. And second of all, welcome on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I can see you know how to roll your R's, so that's perfect.
Yes,
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm from the old country, from Hungary, so I can roll my R's. Yes. And so today we're gonna have a nice casual chat about some of the topics around data-driven transformation. And Rene, you are the head of data at Pernod Ricard, responsible for the Africa region. So first of all, can you just give me a short introduction into what brought you to the world of data? How did you get into all this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's more of a. I wasn't brought in it. I was thrust into it out of necessity, as I think most multinational corporates nowadays are forced to change their way of thinking and their ways of doing to stay relevant. I mean, if you, with no disrespect, but if you look at companies like BlackBerry and Nokia, if perhaps their view of business transformation and data-led decision making was taken into account more, perhaps we would all be walking around with BlackBerry still and using that chat. So I think it's a necessity in most multinational corporates, and in my instance, coming from a sales and marketing background, it was just a natural fit to try and be the link between the sort of data scientist world and that scary dark place where you like to think of it like 100 people sitting in a cave and working in front of computers, compared to everyone else in different functions across the business, the marketing teams, the sales force in trade, and try and be that link to solve the problems from both perspectives.
Mm-hmm. So how do you see this? Because you got into data-driven transformation roughly when? How many years ago?
So it's been almost a year now. Yeah.
Okay, so almost a year. So having kind of almost like an outside perspective, what do you see as the key challenges in the industry today? Before we kind of touched on in our previous conversation, before we started recording the podcast, you mentioned this disconnect between the data science experts and the business. So can you maybe talk a little bit about that? How do you perceive this, and what do you see as the greatest challenges?
Okay. So yeah, I think it's twofold. So from one point, I think there's strategic challenges. So if you've got a certain way of doing things, especially older multinationals, where you used to a traditional business model, we make products, we find routes to market, and we find marketplaces, and we sell it to consumers. It's quite difficult to completely change your mindset, and the pace that technology has changed the way of doing business in the world over the last 20 years. I think in terms of a strategic perspective, it's sometimes challenging for certain organizations to come from the top down with a comprehensive business transformation plan. Guys, this is the future. These are the key topics we're going to focus on, and these are the tools that we're going to give you to solve them. And then in terms of a more like a tactical and operational level, I think it is also challenging for people to migrate their daily tasks and ways of doing. If you've been capturing payments the same way for 20 years, and now you suddenly, it's a different way, it's a more efficient way, but it's something new to learn. And it sort of gives business disruption for a short period, but frees up so much time in the longer run. So to get people on board, to get buy-in, to get them excited about data is not always the easiest thing in the world.
So you mentioned that you have a background in sales and marketing. So back at AB InBev, you work with sponsorships and brand management, right? So how is your life different now on a professional level now that you work in data? How would you describe the key differences?
It's interesting. So I think firstly, you become a support function. So if you're a brand custodian, or if you're in a region in sales, it's quite a different story, because you lean on all the tools that come from head office. So in that instance, I become the person that's responsible to create the tools that's going to make your lives easier. So in the end of the day, you almost become a developer where you used to be a user. And yeah, there's different challenges to that. For when you on the user side, I'll never forget. Sometimes if a system or a process doesn't work, you always like almost swore at the clouds, and you were like, oh, that guy. If I can find him. And now it's the other way around. So I think the biggest link, or the biggest priority that you as a developer need to take into account is you're not the user. I can build the most beautiful data visualization tools, and I can look at it and be proud of myself and high five myself. But if it's not practically, if it's going to take too much time to access and negotiate, that's already a big constraint for users. And also, if it doesn't add intrinsic value in terms of a user's day to day, then your buy-in and your rate of adoption is always gonna be a losing battle.
So ironically, because a lot of people think about data and analytics as a very tech-focused enterprise or endeavor, and ironically, this is what we keep hearing, and it's quite interesting that you have a background in sales and marketing, is that actually those skills and those mindsets and those kind of postures that you need to take in order to be successful in data are closely connected to the elements of persuasion and influence and psychology. So almost like you need to use this strategic and tactical empathy when you build these tools. So how do you see actually at a big organization now this element of influence? What have you perceived as the keys to be successful at actually engaging the organization, actually getting through to people, really sparking their imagination and getting them excited about data? You mentioned this as kind of a bottleneck, but what have you seen or perceived as the keys for success in this area?
Okay. I think first off, I think I would be remiss to consider myself fully successful in this world. Yes, yet I think there's obviously a lot of challenges I'm still facing and learning. But if I had to give a couple of key learnings in my journey so far, it would be there's a term called user adoption testing, and it's interesting when this. It's such a big beast, the whole process of developing tools, fitting it into a marketplace. You're working with a development team in Brazil, and your center of excellence that manages the data governance sits in Paris. And then you've got your marketplace, in South Africa, where we all speak different languages, literally and figuratively. So I think for me, one of the most important things before even attempting to take on a data-led or a data project is to almost do the UATs up front. So instead of sitting in a room and putting together 3 projects, we're going to make this process seamless or automate this process, speak to the users first and find out what are their pain points, and also find out what would be viable solutions for them in their day-to-day. You could potentially solve a pain point, but by over-engineering and being comprehensive in your solve, you're actually flooding people with too much information. Somebody could have asked you, listen, I would like to see how much whiskey is being sold in South Africa. And you go and you speak to every single customer in the country. It takes you 5 years to develop. You put together at an outlet level, on a daily level, an update that gets sent to you and a link on your email. And actually, the only thing that person wanted to know was how many cases are sold a year, which could have been a one-day exercise. And you could have then fulfilled the need better. So I think that's a major learning from my perspective. And I think, if I had to give a second one, it's also over communication, because in a big organization, you have people working in local capacities. We call them affiliates, and you've got people working in in a global context. So let's say you're working from head office's perspective, and then you've got suppliers that you pay a certain amount of money to roll out certain projects. It happens almost daily where you realize that somebody in another department has either already found a solve for your problem, or is currently planning or in development, or has briefed in an agency to solve that problem. Or it could be a case of affiliate to affiliate. We've got a problem in South Africa in terms of data quality, but somebody in Brazil with a similar marketplace has already solved that problem. We just haven't talked to each other and realized that solve exists. So it's over communication in your immediate sphere, so your team, so everyone knows what you're working on. It's over communication in your department. It's over communication to your affiliate, your marketplace, and it's over communication to all your global counterparts and stakeholders.
So there are a few things that I would like to explore here, because you hit on some very important notes there. Even your posture of humility in this is that, oh, look, I don't consider myself an expert. Well, this is actually what we've been seeing, is that there's no established best practice in this. This is kind of like a new area. Everything is changing at an accelerating pace as well. Do you see yourself as a key agent of change in the business as a data leader?
If I had to define it, I would define myself as a facilitator of change. I wouldn't say, like if you're gonna bring real change to a business, it needs to be driven. It needs to be almost. I always make the analogy, and some people like it, some people don't. But I always say, like, you almost need to write it on the walls. It's the first thing you need to think about when you walk in. You need to have clear, deliberate goalposts that everyone in the business is aligned to, in terms of resourcing, in terms of compensation, incentives, and everyone needs to run towards the same goal. So I think I would be wrong if I said that I'm the source of the change. I think maybe, in a couple of years' time, if I manage to progress in my career and I could be a chief transformation officer or have a global position, I could become that advocate for rolling out global projects with that adds real value to affiliates. But for now, I think my role is to understand the pain points in an immediate environment, and then whatever the business comes back from a strategic point of view on how to solve them, I am the link in trying to basically, I'm the hands to do the work that the strategic or level, either head office or CEOs in our marketplace have identified as potential areas of change.
So it's interesting because you mentioned before as well that you're a support function, and even when it comes to driving change, it's almost like you're a facilitator of that. And it's actually quite difficult to figure out what kind of position should you assume as a data leader in order to reach your goals. Even just conceptualizing your goals can be a challenge sometimes when you work with something like data. One of our key contributors, Pete Williams, who's the director of data and online at Penguin Random House, the publishing house, he has a really good concept of the data consigliere, from The Godfather. It's like, okay, as a data leader, that's what you want to be. You want to be a trusted advisor who people actually listen to, and then you can influence change. So what do you think are the key qualities of the successful data transformation leader or the data transformation facilitator? You already mentioned something along the lines of, for example, humility. So if you want to actually succeed in these endeavors, you need to assume a position of humility. But what have you observed as the key qualities of those people who actually succeed in driving data-driven transformations?
So I think there's two personas that I've perceived so far, and the one is somebody with a strong data background, so that knows the ins and outs. I mean, somebody that came through as a data analyst, became a data scientist, knows they can, they program poker games in their spare time, but then also at the same time they have amazing talent to work with people. So you need to understand the technicalities or the back end of the projects that you're working on. But at the same time, you need to be able to package that in a way that makes sense to people, and also be so approachable that people are willing to come to you with problems, and they're not going to feel stupid to come to you and say, listen, I've got this problem. Do you maybe have 5 minutes to chat and see if there's a solution? So I think in my one instance, I think it's somebody that can manage multiple stakeholders at a time, and that's internal, external, global, local, different languages and cultures, but also have the intellect and the talent to understand the technicalities around each project. And then I would say a second persona is somebody that doesn't necessarily have, decades of experience in the back end of data, but have extensive experience in terms of working in different business functions. So again, to my concept of, I think what both have in common is the fact that both of them need to manage multiple stakeholders and different personas and people from different types of expertise. But it really helps a conversation along if you're working on a marketing project, let's say a marketing efficiency project, and somebody gives you a data dump of every element that's gone to trade, the above the line media conventions, and just on face value, you can understand and make sense of that data because you have a marketing background and you've bought media in your past. Sales background, if you're doing customer hierarchy breakdowns and you're trying to make sense of your route to market. If you have a sales background and somebody talks to you about a bar, nightclub, restaurant, you already have an indication of what type of consumer frequency, what type of occasion they have. Do they focus on food, high energy occasions, sport? Like in that instance, being a subject matter expert in various different functions, it makes your life a lot easier when tackling projects and just having a conversation. Because a sales guy, I can promise you for free, being a sales guy myself in the past, you kind of laugh, not laugh, but I mean you make jokes like, oh, this data oak, he's trying to now put in extra work for us on the cell phone app so we can capture data. But when you start to understand their day-to-day and you understand that they get calls from customers at 12 o'clock at night, and sorry, I'm digressing, it happens, then effectively you can relate to them more, and you can understand, you can have empathy and understand where they're coming from. So I think those are the two personas that I've perceived to date that make for good data profiles.
I can 100% relate to the sales experience and working as a salesperson, because also me and my business partner Paul, we've been brought up in sales, right? That's our background. Actually, the whole idea of the data storytellers came from working with senior data practitioners and just kind of realizing some of those skills that we almost accidentally honed over the years, how those are critically needed for these more technologically focused functions, where you tend to think a little bit more on the cold cognition side of things. Even if you look at our logo as the two sides of the brain, the creative, inspirational brain, and then the more statistical, number-oriented brain. The hot cognition with the creative inspiration, the cold cognition with backing up with evidence and logic. Both are critical during decision making. That's what you want to do, right? You want to influence decision making in the company, both on a strategic level, but even if you are just focusing on building a solution for someone, you want to influence their decisions of choosing to behave in a certain way, changing their beliefs and behaviors, which is the essence of any culture. I think that's the definition of culture. It's a set of beliefs and behaviors. So just a question. I don't think we talked about that before, but do you have any thoughts on some of those implementable skills from sales and marketing and branding that you think would be useful for data practitioners to consider and learn and hone as skills?
Definitely. I've actually got quite a strong opinion on that, and I'm happy that I'm talking to a fellow a salesperson. We always joked and said it was like being in the army. You're there in the trenches on the front line. You get all of the crap and none of the glory. But I honestly say to anyone, even interns that I've had in a data space, if you want to lay a foundation that nobody can ever take away from you in your career, start on the front line. Start in sales. The reason is you get to learn in one function, you get to learn a large portion of every function. I'll give, and would you mind me sort of double clicking into that sales space, or do you want to
Absolutely.
double back on data?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, this really hits the spot. Even that you mentioned the army, because I spent years in the army. Paul is the same, right? And we use the same analogy, like being in the trenches, and that experience that we gained, just really interacting with the customers, like really being where the rubber meets the road, and you can use all those kinds of analogies. It's very, very powerful. So absolutely, let's double click and zoom in, because I think we can get a lot of good stuff out of this.
Hmm. So yeah, and in a sales environment, so let's work on a big business example. You would need to know you'd learn customer relationships, which is uh, a critical part of any corporate gig, because it's not just customer relationships, it's internal relationships as well. You learn how to you learn the finance function in its entirety, because if a customer's order is blocked because they didn't pay their account, you would need to understand how to explain that to the customer. And you learn the credit terms. In operations perspective, you start to understand how distribution works, how it goes from one depot to another. When it's out of stock, why is it out of stock? Because you need to explain that to the customer as well. In terms of marketing, when a campaign gets rolled out, traditionally the marketers come to the regions and explain to the sales team, listen, we're marketing this brand for this consumer for this occasion. So, and we're giving you this tools to market the brand. So it's almost like you become immersed in the brands that you are selling. So you get that perception of marketing. A function for me that's kind of underrated, or not kind of, very underrated, is trade marketing. Because if it isn't for trade marketers, all of these beautiful and amazing creative campaigns that come from marketing won't reach the consumer. Then you have the sort of above the line perspective, because you hear the ads on radio and you understand what it's about. So sales for me is like the one of the best places to start. You get all of it, and it's a sad story, but if you really think about it, in a corporate environment, if you don't start at the ground level in sales, you can never really go back. You miss that function for the rest of your life, because you can become a mid-level manager in data, and then you can't go and manage a region or be a country manager if you don't understand distribution, COGS, like finance. How much money are you making per product? How are you getting it to the consumer? What are you using to create push and pull? So yeah, I would say that's definitely a very strong place to start.
So that's really cool, because now we're looking at, okay, for a data practitioner, how useful it is to gain experience in that field, which is more like customer facing. Now, if you think about the skills though that you acquire working in sales, because I work with a lot of good salespeople, a lot of talented salespeople, and also salespeople who might have not been that talented to begin with, or were not as skilled. To be honest with you, when I started off in sales, I was awful, like really, really bad. It actually like really hurt my ego too, because I thought I'm good with people, I can communicate well and all that. And then first 8 weeks of my sales career, I didn't even close a deal. I was struggling hard. And I really had to humble myself and actually acquire skills. And then those skills that really turn into an ability to authentically communicate with people, like this authentic listening. It's not at all being facetious or trying to present yourself as someone who you're not. Actually, it's quite the opposite. The good, successful salespeople are very, very authentic. They can actually listen,
Mhm.
not just so that the customer feels listened to, but actually can focus on and create a unique connection. Now, this unique
Mm.
connection, it always comes up in data. One of the key challenges is that we don't feel connected to the business. We don't have an authentic connection to the business. So maybe I know that we didn't speak about this, but would you be able to think of some of those skills that you acquired, some of those maybe dispositions and postures that you assumed as a salesperson, as a marketing person, that now you can successfully bring into the world of data to evangelize analytics in the business?
No, definitely. I think one aspect, and it was something we actually recently discussed, is putting yourself into the mindset of a customer. Companies, or especially multinational corporates, you always get these terms thrown around like work hard, play hard, customer is king, and it almost goes down the wayside. But effectively, if you look at any business that's ever been successful, that was the core value that they've maintained. So I think that in that aspect, from a sales environment, I just wanted to ask you first, what did you try and sell?
So I was actually in conference sales, right? So when I moved to London, I knew no one. I had like $1,000 in my pocket, and I was like, what kind of job am I going to start? Because I was waitering at the time, actually, probably for a few weeks, and then I was new to London, so I didn't know, what it even takes. Because I was in the army before, so I didn't know the business world. So I just sent out probably like 100 job applications. Didn't even look at the job description, just business development, sales. And well, the phone started ringing Monday morning, and I did this on a Sunday. And this is how it is in sales, because salespeople, when a company finds a good salesperson, that's the best investment that they can make. And if they don't work out, it's a low risk investment. And I just basically got probably 3 job offers by the Wednesday, and I just chose one, and it was actually a great choice. It was a good friend of mine who started a company at the time, who wasn't a friend of mine at the time, but then we became business partners and good friends. Um, he was the best conference salesperson at his previous company, and he just decided to launch a startup. And that's actually how the whole journey started, when we created eventually Data Leaders that we sold in 2020. But that's how I got into sales. It was just basically an opportunity and an ease of access, really. But it was probably the best choice I made, because of the skills and the experience that I gained working with customers.
Mm. Okay, well, just a tip there for the future. If you ever figure out time travel, just start in alcohol sales. It's the easiest job in the world because everyone wants to have what you're selling. So,
So that's how you
um,
started?
yes, yeah. So I think in that instance of taking the analogy of the bonds that you foster with customers and taking it into the data space and into the corporate world. I mean, to your point, like it's such an authentic thing. Like it's not you're just their friend because they're your customer. The amount of customers of mine in my past that I've been to their weddings and they've been to mine, and you actually become, to your point, lifelong friends, is remarkable. So I think if you want to draw or create a parallel to the way that data is supposed to empower business transformation today, like if you have that background, it just enables you to unconsciously put on different hats in your daily life. And it's not being fake or it's being not yourself. It's just the fact that you can understand that a finance person fundamentally perceives the world differently to a salesperson, and a marketing person fundamentally perceives the world differently to an operations person. So when you have that lens and you can put yourself in their shoes and have an authentic conversation and understand, listen, I'm requiring this data from you. I know that month end is crazy for you because that's when you do your audits or whatever. So you know what? Let's do it on Monday. I think that's better. Who wants to work on a Friday anyway? So I think, yeah, being authentic is, that's not just in the business or in data or it's in every aspect of your life. Always be authentic. Otherwise, you're not, people aren't going to like you, and you're also not going to like yourself. But apart from that, yeah, it just helps you to be authentically, seamlessly transfer to different conversations in the business sphere, other than just, hello, I'm Renier, I'm trying to sell you this data project, and I actually don't care what you do for a living. That type of conversation.
Absolutely. No, this is a really exciting topic to explore. Unfortunately, because of the time constraints for this particular interview, we won't be able to get too deep into it. But maybe later on, we can work with you on a data story when we can explore multiple elements of this. Because I can tell you for a fact that this is what we keep hearing from the leading data practitioners, that the differentiator between those people who will be able to really make it in this decade of data that's upon us, it's really the soft skills, and that's what's really needed and missing with data scientists or even senior executives, right? Because if you work in data, it almost like you need to think with your technology and logic and number brain, and you almost lose sight of the of the relationships. You almost lose sight of focusing on fostering these meaningful relationships and actually becoming a trusted advisor. So the more we can shine a light on that, I think the more change we can bring to these organizations. So maybe you and I can explore this at a later interview, or maybe working with you on a data story. So just kind of circling back to data, because unfortunately we'll need to wrap up in a few minutes. But what are you most excited about now when you look at the field of data, being at a large company like Pernod Ricard, working with these solutions, and again, now it's the 2020s. So data-driven change, it's becoming more and more of a buzzword. So what are you most excited about in the field?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you so much. It speaks so much to our vision for like a 3 and 5 year plan for Pernod Ricard as a company and as an affiliate in South Africa and Africa. I'm the most excited about getting closer to the consumer in all facets of what that entails. So from a marketing perspective, to be more efficient in the way that we spend our money to reach the target audience. So instead of talking to somebody that actually doesn't care about Jameson, to reaching somebody that loves Jameson and would want to keep hearing about what's happening in the Jameson world. In terms of you know, putting our prices at the right level where consumers can resonate to it. Getting obviously via legal and ethical means data that consumers. I don't know. Have you heard about zero party data as yet?
I've heard of it, but if you can elaborate a little bit on that, I think that would be useful.
So that's also something I stumbled across recently, and like it's actually insane to think. And I was on a panel a month ago, and we were discussing the legality and ethical use of consumer data, and everyone sort of came with a lens of this is what we need to do to ensure that data doesn't get stolen or whatever, almost like a gate. Where I came in and said, listen, but we must realize that there's a whole generation of people coming through the system that want to give their data, that want to be on TikTok. If they could strap 180 GoPros to their body every day of every second of their life, they would. So for me, it's what excites me is to take a traditional business model. We have brands that the world loves and enjoys, and we sell it in a market, to creating opportunities to engage with consumers, be it via, it can be via own channels or third-party channels or in trade, and creating like as many as possible really, really cool experiences with our brands, with our consumers, and using data to be the enabler of that, to understand where our consumers are, what do they like, and it's not in terms of a selfish way to obviously want to generate revenue, but like really build meaningful relationships with your consumers, and these consumers opting in and saying, listen, I love Jameson so much. Whenever you have a party, whenever you have a promotion, whenever you do something cool with a local DJ, I want to know about it and I want to be involved with it. And I want to actually take it a step further and be an ambassador for your brand with my friends and in my circles. So to be honest, like that, it's a bit of a short, long answer, but that is the thing that excites me the most.
It's funny. I'm not just saying it for the sake of this interview, but Jameson happens to be my favorite whiskey, actually. So yeah.
Just send me your address.
Yes, exactly. I was just fishing for some free samples. So no, absolutely, and this does sound very exciting, and I look forward to seeing how you guys manage to bring this vision to reality. And this was a really good interview. Thank you, Renier. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up now, but we wish you the best in the future, and we look forward to having you on the show, or maybe in a different quality at the Data Storytellers in the future.
Yeah, thank you, and share the link with me so I can make you guys famous on LinkedIn as well.
Absolutely, looking forward to that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Cheers.